Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just 1 hour away from the big debate tonight between Ted Cruz and that other guy, Robert Francis O'Rourke. But right now, thank you for joining us. Of course, my name is Justin Lurie, and I'm joined by none other than our U.S. nominee, or U.S. I got to say that correctly. U.S. candidate nominee. What's the right way to say that?
District 29 candidate.
District
Republican
29.
nominee.
The winner of the primary, the winner of the runoff. His name is none other than Mr. Phillip Aronoff, and we are joining you live from his house. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you for reaching out, Justin.
And so Phillip has been active in party politics for decades. That doesn't date you, does it? No.
I don't mind being dated.
It is, yeah. Well,
I don't mind being dated.
Experience has a premium.
You know, the institutional memory is really interesting as well. I mean, for people like me now who were young when the Republicans took over Texas, I mean, I knew Bill Clements well, and it was a privilege. And so I'm sort of the institutional memory that hopefully can pass on to the next generation some of the history of how Texas went from being a 100% Democratic state to what is currently statewide, 100% Republican state, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
Well, Phillip had a great line at his big debate over at U of H downtown, and you said, I hope I get this right, not say it offensively. You said, I'm an old guy with no hair with some really good ideas.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay,
That's
good.
right.
If I remember that one wrong, that would have been really, truly.
That's it. No, I've learned to have thick skin the last 11 months. And my wife has always told me I have no feelings anyway, so.
All right, let me give you the quick background, quick bullet points. He's been married to the lovely Lynn for now 50 years.
This year, yeah.
That's right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And he's had a business career of even longer.
Well, not much longer. We got married shortly after college.
And currently, the most interesting thing. Hey, Elizabeth, can I trouble you to put that on the tablet, please? Thank you. Okay.
He's talking to the producer.
I'm talking to our
director,
producer,
to our new
director. And says, yes, please help me.
This is her first experience being our director, so we're glad to have her here.
Thank you. As I look off camera in the distance. All right. Currently, something very interesting about Phillip. He's also the honorary consulate general, the CG, from the nation of Hungary.
That's correct. I've served for 14 years as the honorary consul. Houston has the third largest consular corps in the United States with 95 consulates. I have served as the secretary of the consular corps for the last 3 years, and it's just been amazing. And the reason Houston has so many consulates is because of the oil industry. And everybody wants to have access to the decision makers when it comes to energy, because everybody knows their country's going to run on energy, not on solar panels. And so that's why Houston is so important. And that's why when Russia opened its first consulate in the center, or in the interior of the United States, it was Houston, and the same with China.
So New York has more consulates.
It does, but they're all attached to the United Nations.
That's right. And then what city is it? Chicago or Los Angeles?
Los Angeles is second, then Houston's third, Chicago's fourth.
Interesting. All right. So you started your career with your father in the scrap metal business.
Yeah, we had a scrapyard in the 29th Congressional District inside the Port of Houston, where we exported scrap steel to Mexico. We would cut up old railroad cars and then send them down to the docks, load them up, and ship it to Mexico.
How long have you been in that business for?
About 28 years. Mexico went through an economic crisis in 1994, and they had no access to dollars, and I wasn't going to sell into Mexico for pesos. And so I decided I had to go look for other opportunities because that would not be viable. I actually anticipated a revolution in Mexico in 1994. They had the beginnings of a revolution in Chiapas with Comandante Marcos, the assassination of the designated president, the assassination of the head of the party, the assassination of the church. And I thought the country was really going to just totally implode and go total chaos. But fortunately, the new president came in, Ernesto Zedillo, and he saved the country.
Have you followed at all, and this is really in the weeds, it's been pretty big with the oil industry. Pemex has made a whole number of contracts, and it's gone all the way through to giant rigs, offshore rigs, huge capital expenditures of equipment. And now that they're ready to be delivered, Pemex, which is really the government of Mexico, has said, non gracias. And then they won't pay for it. Senator Cruz has been very active in this. And some of these small companies, they have no ability to get credit right? They mess with
The U.S. companies.
I'm talking Houston
Yeah,
companies.
yeah, the supplying companies.
And this has happened to a couple of my friends are caught in this mess now
But there was
too.
an article this week in the paper that the new incoming president, Lopez Obrador, is starting to soften some of his harsh positions on energy. In fact, he announced that they had some new oil fields, offshore oil fields, shallow fields, and so that they did say that they may be out looking for equipment for those. So I think that'll turn around once he's in office. People just don't know what he's going to be like. He takes office December 1st, and I think they're frightened because the man has always been a leftist, and everybody's frightened. But I think because they're so close to the United States, they're not going to become like Venezuela. We're too big to sort of keep an eye on them to let that happen. And in addition to that, he's got to feed 120, 115 million people. So I think he'll be more pragmatic than he appeared to be at the beginning.
Is that all the business you've done with Mexico over the various decades? Is that why you learn fluent Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, I realized when I went down there that if I didn't speak the language, I could only deal with a few limited number of people in an organization. And I'm shipping material down there, and there are issues a lot of time with the material. So I'm interacting by being able to speak Spanish. I could interact with the people in the factory, the people on the floor of the steel mill, and not just with the senior management people.
And I want to give a thank you to the Republicans of Houston for commenting on my Spanish accent. So thank you. Your opponent, Sylvia Garcia, does she speak Spanish?
She says she does. I mean, I've never had a conversation with her. I've seen her throw out a few phrases. So I assume she does. I have no reason to doubt her word on that.
If you have any questions for Philip, any comments, I have the tablet here with me, so please throw them out at us. Also, U of H alumni. I thought was something really interesting is we had the same degree, international business.
Yeah.
Not many people have that degree. It's a rare one.
And U of H at that time had a great program in it. They had a visionary dean, a man named Eugene Hughes, who was my advisor, who was an internationalist, and set up that program when he was the dean of the school. This was in 63. I started college and graduated in 67. That was the first year that U of H was a state university. It went from private in 63 to being a state university. So it really, they had a lot of money, were able to expand. But Dr. Hughes was there when it was private, stayed on when it became a public university.
It's interesting you remember the name of Dr. Hughes.
He was inspirational to me.
A lot of people, my dad included, could barely remember which university he went to. You know, I couldn't. I don't think he remembers any of his old professors. So cheers to you. Good memory.
My most inspiring professor of my entire educational career was Dr. J. Edwin Beck. I was in college 20 years after World War II, and his course was economic geography, which is why is everything where it is? Why is Houston here? Why is Topeka where Topeka is? But during the war, because he was a geographer, he was in charge of decoding a lot of the the spy plane photographs that were taken during the war. And he would talk about that a lot. And it was very interesting, but he was just inspirational, this guy. And I stayed in touch with him for a number of years after college. So,
yeah, cool stuff. All right, let's shift over to Philip's work in politics when he started, some of the early days back then. When did you first realize that you were political at heart?
I never did until my boyhood friend was appointed a judge in 1980 by Governor Clements. And he called me up and said, I have to run a campaign for judge and you have to run it for me. I said, I don't know anything about politics. And he said, learn and learn quickly. So I went to the library and checked out 3 books on how to run a political campaign. And we did it. And that year there were like 20 judges up, about 10 of which were appointed in the previous 2 years by Governor Clements, and only 2 won, my candidate and another man who had been a Democrat, went back into private practice and came back and was appointed by Governor Clements. And the condition was you had to run as a Republican, and that was instrumental in building a Republican Party. But in running the campaign, I met all the leadership of the Harris County Republican Party, which in 1980 were not very many people. So 2 years later, in 82, in the next election cycle, these people are calling me and asking me to help them on campaigns like for John Tower. I think that was the year John Tower was up again. And all of a sudden, I'm working in lots of campaigns, judicial campaigns, locals, and just my biggest takeaway to anybody who ever wants to get involved in politics, you're going to meet the most wonderful, greatest patriots you'll ever meet, but you'll also meet the biggest phonies, and it doesn't take long to tell which is which. And that's been my biggest takeaway from the tremendous people that I've had the privilege to know through my activities in politics.
So 1980, was Harris County, was that red or was that blue?
It was completely red.
Completely
blue.
So
completely
that was
Democratic.
that was the Reagan year, right? So it was 80.
Bill Elliott was the county judge, and all four county commissioners were all Democrats. There were no Republicans.
So what happened with the judge?
With my friend, he won. He won, and he served out his term and ran for re-election. And then he retired and opened up a private practice, and he's still my dearest friend, and he's still a very prominent lawyer here in town.
So you caught the bug in 80.
Well,
you returned in 82.
I saw a need. I was very comfortable with the Republican philosophy, with the conservative worldviews. I read George Gilder's book, Wealth and Poverty, which really opened up my eyes, understood the concept of supply-side economics, which really was best laid out in Wealth and Poverty. And so I was very comfortable there. I was very involved in the pro-Israel community, and there wasn't a big presence of the pro-Israel community in the Republican Party at that time either. And so I realized that with the opportunity, I also have a responsibility. And so that sort of kept me going for a while.
So what was the next big campaign you worked in after, say, 82 or maybe including 82?
Well, I mean, 88, I worked in I worked in the primary for the presidents, and then I worked for George Bush's campaign, not in a high-level position, but just as, a volunteer in 88, and then again in 92. I don't know, let's see, it would have been in 93 when Kay Hutchison ran. I was the number 2 person to sign up for her campaign in Texas. She and I were good friends because she was the state treasurer at the time. We had a state treasury, and I was the chairman of the Texas Purchasing and General Services Commission. And I bought 3 buildings for the state of Texas because the real estate market was very depressed, and we took advantage of it. And one of the buildings was the treasurer's building. Kay would call me up once a week wanting changes, and I never told her no. And so when she decided to run for senator, she called me and said, I need your help. And so I was honored to help her. And so I helped her campaign. I'd helped Phil Graham's campaign.
Do you still talk to KVH?
She's in Brussels.
If you're not familiar, KVH is now the secretary. She is a U.S. ambassador to NATO. So she has one of the all-time cool jobs out there.
Well, it's tough responsibility too.
Yes. We have a friend who's going to go visit her just after the midterms.
Yeah.
And I guess she'll get the royal treatment out there.
I'm sure. I haven't talked to her in a couple of years.
So when you win in November, I hope that you make an official visit to go visit KVH.
Well, I plan to.
All right, because you bring us with you when you go on that official visit.
But you have to go to Copenhagen with me, where I'm going to have a new grandson born there in January of next year. So,
well, we like to travel.
All right.
Well, it's going to be tough because our son will be born in April.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be, I don't know if they'll let us on the plane.
All right.
Yeah. All right. One thing that you didn't talk about that I think is very cool, and maybe I'll get this right or wrong, I don't have it in my notes. You were George W. Bush's campaign chairman for his 1994 gubernatorial run. That's quite a title.
Well, it was Steve Raddick and I and a woman named Penny Butler with the 3 co-chairmen. But how that came about, I knew George Bush casually. I'd met him during his father's campaign, but didn't have a close relationship with him. But when he announced, my friend Rob Mosbacher wanted to run for governor, but Rob withdrew. And so nothing was happening with the Bush campaign, and everybody wanted to help organize Harris County. I mean, he was certainly the underdog. Ann Richards was thought to be very popular. And as I said at the time, her popularity is very wide but very shallow. It's very shallow. And so I called him up. I said, George, everybody's complaining here that they want to help in your campaign. They want to get involved, but nothing's happening. And he said to me, would you organize Harris County for me? And I said, sure. I want you to win the governor's race, and I think we can do it. And so I organized it. I hired Judge West's wife to be the day-to-day manager, the professional. And I was the Harris County co-chairman.
Do you still keep up with George W.?
He sent me a big check for my campaign.
Hey, that's a nice little feather in the hat.
It was his own check. It wasn't some PAC or a fund he had. The check said George W. Bush, Laura W. Bush.
I asked George too for my campaign, and our check was slightly different than yours.
Was it?
We'll leave it. We'll leave it at that.
Well,
okay. Just sitting here, I don't think you could see it on the screen. Behind me is a really nice picture from the Oval of Phillip and Lynn. What year was that?
That was 2002, November of 2002, right before the war in Iraq started, because I encouraged him to go into Iraq. We spent some time talking about it, and nobody knew what his plans were at that time. But I told him, what I said at the time was, I said, look, when Hitler violated every agreement that was made at the end of World War I, they kept moving and moving and moving the goalposts till there was nowhere more to move it, and 60 million people died. And Saddam Hussein has violated every agreement he made with your father to end the Gulf War. And if we let him do it with impunity, it's going to end up just as ugly as World War II ended up. And so if you're going to make a treaty and it's violated, it's got to be sanctions to violate it. So that's how I felt about the war. Sadly, it wasn't executed as well as it should have been. It's impossible not to make mistakes in that job. But there were some big mistakes made, and the biggest one was allowing the military, the Iraqi military, to be disbanded. And they all went home with their rifles, but you don't know that.
And no money.
And no money. And you
That's
don't
right.
know
That's
that
the biggest problem.
And so one little mistake like that turned everything. And but his intentions were pure and honest and right. There was no going after oil. There was no going after anything else than enforcing a treaty and liberating the prisoners of the population of Iraq. So I would support it again today. And I admire George Bush for having the courage to do it.
Good story, by the way. All right, I have a question here I'm going to read from that's come across. If you have more questions, please throw it out. Going back to your mention of Israel, what do you consider yourself to be a Zionist?
Well, I don't know how you define a Zionist. If you define a Zionist as someone who supports the right of the Jewish people to have a homeland in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas, yes. If you define as someone who wants to move to Israel one day, no, this is my country, this is my home, and I don't want to live anywhere but Houston, Texas, in fact. So it depends on your definition, but I'm 100% committed to the support of the security and welfare of Israel.
All right, let's move on to your platform. We're 3 weeks left until the midterms.
Is that soon?
It's 3 weeks to the day, right?
I didn't notice.
Yeah.
I did notice. I assure you, I noticed.
Okay. This is something that I talk about. I know you talk about a lot too. If there was ever a question about what philosophy with government works, where the economy or the regulation, it's been proven. The question's been answered. We had 8 years of Obama, 8 years of awful, dreadful, meaningless growth or even negative growth. Now we've had 2 years of the opposite approach. Lower taxes, lower regulations, and creating the environment for growth for businesses to expand and without the heavy hand of government. How do you feel about this situation?
It's obvious. The left is completely wrong. I have to do the ultimate result of the left is going to be Venezuela. That's what happens when you have big government running things. I was interviewed this last week by the League of Women Voters, and they asked me a question about the economy. I said the best answer to that is the story Ronald Reagan used to tell. In the early 1950s, when he was a movie star and a popular movie star, making the maximum per movie that most people made, which was about $100,000, the income tax rate was 90% left over from World War II. And so they asked him to make a movie, and they offered him his regular fee. And he said, well, I make a movie, give up all my free time, and I have $10,000 left over. It's not worth it to me. So he didn't make the movie. Didn't affect his life, and the movie was never made. So the makeup lady, the gaffer, the film crew, the camera crew, none of those people had a job that they all would have had a job if Ronald Reagan could have kept even half that money. So that, to me, proves the whole theory of the economics that people do not work to pay taxes. They don't invest to pay taxes. They work for the personal benefit for themselves and their families.
Given your work as a consul, like a CG, a consul general, and your relationship with all these different consulates throughout Houston, do you have opinions or thoughts you want to share about the Trump approach to the hard line of tariffs and using the tariffs as a will of economic might?
He's a tough negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm opposed to tariffs. I think Trump has said he's opposed to tariffs. He's just negotiating. At the debate with Sylvia at University of Houston, I made the statement. I said, it's not how I would do it. I wouldn't beat my friends over the head in a negotiation like that. I try and work for looking at a win-win rather than being so tough to force them to do something. But as I said in the debate, if it works, my hat's off to him. It's working. He got Canada and Mexico to come in line. I think China's going to come in line very soon too.
When do you think China will make it?
But if he's wrong, it's catastrophic. And as I said, I'm going to vote for the Democrat next time too, because if it's catastrophic, it's back to the Depression, World War II, after Smoot-Hawley tariffs, where those weren't done for negotiating; those were done for protectionist purposes. Which is really the reason for tariffs, is protectionist. But he's a tough negotiator, and so far he's being proven right, not being proven wrong. And I hope it stays that way.
When do you think China will make a comprehensive deal with America?
It's getting tough right there. Their economy is falling. Their currency was just down by 15% until they had
stock
to start
market is collapsed.
So they've got 1.5 billion people to feed.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford a war with us, either a trade war or a shooting war. I mean, today again there was a report of the ships coming real close to each other. There's no way they could tolerate that, and so they have to pretty soon come to the table. My guess is sometime after the first of the year, they'll sit and start talking. When Mr. Xi will invite him back or something, or maybe if he goes to Korea, he'll stop in Beijing on his way back. But they have a vested interest, and he's more right on China than he is on any other country as far, because they have taken unfair advantage. They forced our businesses to turn over their technological information, their trade secrets. And they don't play fair.
They don't play fair is right. My prediction, I say this a lot, after the midterms, China is going to be very surprised Republicans not only hold the House, maybe even win a couple seats, but the Senate will become more Republican. That's going to give Trump even more political capital. So I have a feeling that China will want a deal before the new Congress will be seated in January. So I see an early December resolution, just in time for the fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, as a partisan, I'm enjoying hearing from the other party everything I heard from them 2 years ago, right before the election with Trump, how they were going to take over the House again and take over the Senate again and win the presidency. And they were just so euphoric until November 6th happened. And I think it's going to be worse this time. I mean, my friends who are screaming how happy they are about Beto or
whatever,
or
Robert
Francis. I say, didn't you say that 4 years ago about Wendy Davis? I said, oh, no, we didn't say it about Wendy. Well, yes, they did.
Yes, you did. We'll get to predictions at the end. Let's skip over to your race. Who are you facing?
State Senator Sylvia Garcia.
And what is it that people should know about her they may not know now?
Well, it's difficult for me to talk about because I don't like these things, but the people have a right to know that she was sued when she was with the city of Houston by an employee for sexual harassment. And they never went anywhere. They wouldn't accept. The judge threw out. This was 20 years ago, so there was no real issue of sexual harassment back then in the public consciousness, and so she didn't win the lawsuit over that. But the woman was very upset seeing all this stuff going to Christine Ford, getting all this attention, being treated like a saint, with much less evidence than this woman had. And so she was upset about it, and she said, I should be able to clear my name too. So she contacted through an intermediary my campaign and said, I would like to submit an affidavit. Would you help us distribute it? So we've been trying to help her distribute it, and hopefully the media will respond because they have it. We've spoken to the media people, and they have it, and I think the voters have a right to know if those people were so upset about Brett Kavanaugh is going up to the Supreme Court. Do they want to elect somebody to the United States Congress with really more substantive charges against her?
How does your campaign differ from her campaign? Let's go issue by issue. Are you ready? First one, taxes.
She wants to raise taxes. She thinks only 1% of the people got the advantage from the tax cut. As I said to her in the debate, ask anybody who works for AT&T who got $1,000 check. Ask anybody who works for Walmart who got a big raise. Everybody in Walmart got a big raise because of the tax
I
cut.
believe Sylvia called these crumbs.
Well, I didn't hear her call
Maybe it was Pelosi.
Yeah, Pelosi certainly called them crumbs.
Same thing.
And so all the jobs being created, so she doesn't understand economics like that.
Simple, basic philosophical differences. All right, next issue, immigration.
We're both pretty liberal on immigration. I mean, I believe as far as the DACA kids are concerned, the Democrats use them only as a political tool to try and hit the Republicans with. I was with 4 of these young people yesterday at a church symposium, a day before yesterday, where I spoke. And I said to these young people, I said, I apologize to you on behalf of the government of the United States that they took you, raised your hopes, and used you just as a political tool, when if they would have sat down and said to the other side of the aisle, let's help these kids, it wouldn't have just been the 850,000 kids who were left in a state of suspension. That's the tragedy of it. This could have been solved 4 years ago, and not for the 850,000, but for the 2 million that are here. But they couldn't do it because then they wouldn't have something to hit the Republicans over the head with. So I'm angry about that because these kids are suffering for these people's political ambitions.
Well, how do we fix the current system that we have now?
Well, I wrote an article that was published in the Houston Chronicle about a revival of the Bracero program from World War II. It had a lot of flaws and they can be repaired. But basically, if someone wants to come here and work and there are jobs needing people, they can get a visa easily, and they don't have to pay the coyote to smuggle them in the back of a truck where 18 young people died in Wharton, Texas 4 years ago, or died trying to cross the desert in Arizona. And people will be able to find people to do the work. Drive through any industrial part of Houston. Everywhere you see signs, help wanted, top dollar paid. I mean, we need people here.
Does that mean you secure the border?
Well, sure, you have to secure the border. If we're going to be a country and have laws, you have to have laws.
There you go. What about your opponent? What does she say in securing the border?
She supports sanctuary cities. People come across the border with children, you just let them go. She talks about ripping families apart. And I made a statement at one of the events I was at. The Houston Police Department separate families, and somebody admonished me and said, what do you mean the police department separates families? I said, they don't take the kids to jail when they take daddy to jail. And she looked at me and said, oh, yes, you're right. And that's the thing. These people break our laws. Either we're a nation of laws or we're not a nation of laws. If we're not a nation of laws, we'll be just like the countries that these people fled. Because the reason they fled those countries is because they're run by caudillos, not by laws. And that's what makes this country so great.
Next topic, healthcare.
Get the government out of it. The government has made a mess of it. When I had my first child in the 60s, I paid everything. It's like $1,300. Hospital care, prenatal, postnatal, everything. By the time my third child was born 10 years later, the government interceded and said, you must cover maternity care with your health insurance. So the third one cost me $150. That's a pretty good deal. But the whole bill was $10,000. Went from $1,500 to $10,000 because nobody cared, because nobody's paying for it. And somebody paid for that. And so that's what happens when the government gets involved in healthcare. It totally distorts things. You read about the EpiPens. Well, it's because the government's paying for it, so nobody cares. There was a show on NPR a couple weeks ago about how expensive somebody's diabetes medicine is. It went from $300 to $1,100. Nobody cares when someone else is paying for it.
Question came in from the comments here. Stephen asks you, Philip, can I keep my guns?
You better. I got mine. You got yours. We're going to always have those.
What about your opponent?
I never did. She's never talked about guns that I've heard of, so I don't know her position on that.
All right. How about there's a story out there that she's a state senator and she has not yet resigned from the Senate.
Because she doesn't care about the people. She only cares about herself and getting her pension. If she serves one day in the next year, she's eligible to buy the whole year's worth of pension benefits. And so she doesn't care about the people. They will have no if she wins, and I'm hoping she won't, because the people will still have representation in the Senate if she wins. If she loses, but she didn't care. I told her early on. I tweeted out, you need to resign so they'll have representation. But this way, there'll be no representation. If she wins, there'll be no representation in the Senate in the whole legislative term, because you're going to have a race, and you're going to have a runoff. And then the two women from the House, Carol Alvarado and Ana Hernandez, are going to run against each other. So they're not going to be taking care of their business in Austin either. And let the whole legislative sessions, the people in the 11th district, the 11th senatorial district will not have any representation.
There's a simple way to fix this. Vote for Philip. That's an easy one. What do you need to do to win? We need people to vote.
Yeah, I mean, if the message of her history is known by the voters, if they understand how the values, the family values that I represent are the antithesis to what she represents. She wants to let a 7-year-old little boy become a little girl, and she thinks that's a beautiful thing, and I don't. I think a 7-year-old child has no ability to know any gender identity or anything like that. That's important to her. She's carried the water on that. She was the one who carried the water on the so-called bathroom bill to try and continue. 60% of the people in this district voted to repeal the bathroom bill when it was a referendum. And the family values of being married before you have children, of staying with your family together, hard work, love of country, love of your God and religion, those are not the values of my opponent's party. And I would dare say she hasn't represented those values that I have heard her speak. So the values of the sanctity of human life, these are not the values that she or her party represents. But it's difficult to get that message out to people. And that's why I'm here tonight. Hopefully there's enough people watching this, and they'll understand what the values that they're voting for, whichever way they vote. We're
going to keep it short tonight because the Ted Cruz debate is on, and Philip needs to be somewhere to go give a speech. So if you last call now for questions over the Facebook, right? It's dreadful to say it. Last call for questions over Facebook. All right, let's move to our final section here. We'll do predictions.
Okay.
This is my favorite spot. I leave this for the end. All right, first one, Governor Abbott. I can't speak tonight. Governor Abbott versus Lupe Valdez.
Well,
who wins and how many points?
I thanked one of my Democratic friends for giving us Lupe Valdez. I mean, they had such an attractive candidate in Andrew White. Look, she's not even a serious candidate. So as far as percentage, I'm not going to guess. I mean, I guess the baseline for the Democratic Party statewide is somewhere around 35 to 38%. She won't even get a baseline.
I say Abbott by 24.
Okay,
next one. The man with the big debate in a few minutes. Senator Cruz versus Robert Francis O'Rourke.
I think people realize Robert Francis O'Rourke is an empty suit, and he's not going to do very well at all in spite of the $38 million that he got last month.
Where do you even spend that money, honestly?
I got three phone calls today from his campaign on my phone. I'm sitting in a meeting, the phone rings. It's hi, this is so and so with the Beto O'Rourke campaign. I'm busy.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
Always, if they call you, always say he's not Bernie Sanders enough. He needs to be. He's too conservative. Tell Beto he's too conservative. Keep pushing him left.
Well,
I mean, honestly, all the media's been bought already. There's not many spots left. 3 weeks ago, what do you do with a lot of money? I don't know. Maybe stay at the polls.
I don't
Got
know,
me.
You know.
Here's one of my favorites. My favorite race, of course. Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw versus Todd the Kitten Litton.
Well, the Chronicle, I was surprised, endorsed Todd Litton this morning.
How are you surprised by that?
Well, because I'm still hoping for their endorsement. We'll see. But
that's kind of you.
Well,
Do you want it?
Yeah, sure I do. It's my hometown newspaper, and I want
All right.
them to recognize what I've done for this city and community, and realize that I've earned their endorsement.
I think you have as well.
And hopefully they'll realize that too, and give it to me. It'd be a nice thing on my tombstone, if nothing else.
Who did they endorse in the governor race?
I think they endorsed Abbott. I didn't see. They haven't endorsed yet in the governor's race.
They haven't? Okay.
No, they haven't endorsed the lieutenant governor's race yet either. Today they did Todd Litton. But no, I mean, Dan Crenshaw will win that, I think, by 8 or 9 points.
I say Crenshaw by 14 points.
Okay.
I have a lot of faith in you, Dan.
Well, you know the district better than I do. You ran in that district.
That's right.
So.
Dan by 14. All right. Pete Olson versus a guy I met Sunday over at Fox, Sri Kulkarni.
He's got a Kirkani's got a distinguished career, and Pete Olson's done a good job as a congressman. But that area is certainly a conservative Republican area. The immigrants, it's a heavy immigrant area.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Pakistanis, a lot of Indians. Kulkarni comes from, I believe, the Indo-Pakistani groups, but there's some rivalries between the two still carried over from the pre-partition days or the post-partition days.
Post-partition days too, yeah.
Both, yeah. But I think Pete Olson will still hold it. The people love him and know him there.
Oh, I didn't know much about Sri until I met him the other day. I think the best part about him is his middle name is Preston, like our son. But Sri is a universal health care guy. He's an open border guy. And those two things, I think, should make you automatically disqualified from being a member of Congress. I mean, in terms of, I don't see how people could vote for someone who says healthcare, Medicaid for all, Medicare for all. There's absolutely no way that could possibly work in any situation. And that's his platform. I mean, yeah, he went to Harvard. He was in the Foreign Service. Fine. But if your ideas are just so far out there, he's like Alessandro Ocasio-Cortez, but with a degree from Harvard.
Well, I'll tell you my realization this week, trying to see if the media will pick up the story that I shared with you about the woman who filed the affidavit against my opponent. They're really managing the media beyond my wildest dreams. I always heard it, seen sort of semi-examples, or at least on the shows, the talk shows. They talk about the issues, they slant it, but this is complete management. So my conclusion I drew this week was their policies are so bad for the government with all the media behind them, with this distortion of the facts of what makes the world work, we're still winning. And the reason we're winning is because we have proven what works and they have proven what doesn't work. And we give people better lives and they make people servants to the government. I'm for self-empowerment. My opponent, Kirkani, these people are not for self-empowerment.
On that same note, a question came in from Facebook, and it said, has the blue wave peaked?
I don't think it ever took off. I mean, the blue wave peaked in 2008 when Barack Obama won. And we have picked up so many seats since then. People realize that they can't tell the truth from the left. If they tell the truth, no one's going to vote for them. And you can only hide the truth so long before the consequences become evident. That's why the people have been voting Republican since the election 2008.
2010 midterms. Yeah. All right, 2 more predictions. The 7th district, incumbent John Culberson versus Lizzie Pennell Fletcher. How's that going?
I feel very good for John in that one. John has been very good about coming home again. For a while, he wasn't here as much as he should have been, but he learned his lesson, and he realizes where he belongs and who he needs to take care of. He's doing a good job of it. And I'm proud of him for having realized that, made the changes he needed to make, and he's doing a great job taking care of the district. He got money that we needed when after the hurricane, and one of her primary opponent's father is a lifelong friend of mine who said to me, biggest frustration with Liz is she won't take a position on anything, no matter what you ask her. Well, she gives you both sides, says we need to have a study. I don't know. That's what the father of one of her opponents said to me. So, yeah.
All right. I say John wins by 7. I'm going to limb. I think it's going to be bigger than I thought before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would be a red wave, actually. I think we're going to pick up 3 or 4 seats in the Senate, including Florida. I mean, a socialist running for governor in Florida, and they think the old people are going to vote for a socialist who wants to tax their, death taxes and all that. That's why they moved to Florida.
So with no income tax. That's right.
Yeah, but I mean, you realize they have a socialist and a failed socialist. He's a terrible mayor running as governor, and I think he's going to pull Bill Nelson down. I think we're going to pick up Florida's Senate seat as well.
Last prediction, a race you know very well. Mr. Phillip Aronoff versus Sylvia Garcia. Who wins and by how many?
Well, that's an unfair question. You asked about Lupe Valdez, and I've been admonished by this for people. I mean, when people say to Lupe, "How you gonna win, Lupe?" and she says, "Yeah, I think she looks like a fool," and I don't want to look like a fool.
Okay, so I'll answer the question for you. Phillip wins by 1 point. It's going to be a nail biter, and he wins by 1 point. Is that fair?
I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged the people in the district voted her out of office once before. They know why they voted her out of office, and I think they'll do it again.
It's our commissioner, Jack Mormon, beat her.
That's right. And so I think I can win it. I hope to win it. I want to win it. I've worked very hard to win it. But look, I'm certainly the underdog. The district was 75% for Hillary Clinton, and that makes it very difficult for a Republican to win. But if the people know my story, they'll vote for me.
All right. Last thing. Any plugs? Upcoming speeches, events, TV appearances. Where can they find you?
Just go to my webpage, Aronoff, Aronoff, for Congress, FOR Congress.
Yes, it's on the sign behind us.
So
speeches, events.
No, I
don't.
Nothing scheduled of my own. I mean, I'm not putting anything on.
All right, tonight. Last question: who's going to win the debate tonight? Cruz versus the other guy.
Depends who you like. Whoever you like is going to win.
So diplomatic. All right, yeah. Ted's gonna mop the floor with him. All right, that's everything.
Beto did a good job in the first debate. I give credit.
Really?
I thought he did. He answered well. He was articulate. He was wrong on the issues, but you're talking more style. Well,
that was awkward. Well, that was definitely awkward. We're gonna,
Ted, I'm sorry. You want to go win, Ted. Ted, I promise you're going to win big.
All right, that's everything. Thank you very much for watching tonight.
Justin,
thank you, Phil, for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
We're going to have some fun later. All right, thank you, everybody.